For me, the hardest thing is like managing people. I'm very impatient. I'm like, let's go. I don't want to sit there and talk about your feelings. I have 3 kids at home. Like, I have enough feelings to deal with. And so I'm constantly just like, a lot of that takes away from that. I don't need to sit and have these conversations about, you know, why did this take you so long? Why didn't you get this done X, Y, and Z? Where I can see, because data is being pulled from these tools, how long it's taking them. If there's an issue, then I can address it. But to say, you know, this should only take this amount of time and here's why, and then we can schedule it that way.
Welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today I'm joined by Morgan, Katie, and Jon. Before we get into intros, just a few little short notes. One is, you already been told this is going to be a recorded podcast. We're recording right now. We're live at CBUSA in Minneapolis to a crowd of probably 280, 300 for those listening and not here. We are going to be recording this through another platform called Fathom. It's an AI tech. After, it's going to consolidate everything we're talking about. It'll give you speaking notes, and it'll be emailed to all of you after this, just to show you something you can do. Many of you probably use something called Otter when I do my Zoom calls or my Google calls that does the same thing. And so we wanted to obviously show you something very quickly of how AI could be useful right away. So why don't we start a little with introductions. I'll let each person introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of get into it.
Okay, you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm Katie Kath, and as mentioned, I'm the partner and creative director behind Kath Design, Build, and Reinvent. My husband is the founder, but I am in present day the everything else. So I run the company. We have a team of 10, and we specialize locally here in Minneapolis in high-end renovations. We do a lot of old homes. Our niche is here in the cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, urban homes, doing additions, taking 100-plus-year-old homes apart all the way down to the studs, and figuring out how to make it feel brand new again. We have an in-house design studio as well, and the roots of our company started with a custom cabinetry shop, so we still own a shop, and we have a retail collection that we distribute cabinetry nationwide. That's it.
Okay. I'm Morgan Molitor, design build of construction of style alongside my husband here in the Twin Cities as well. Katie's a colleague and competitor here, but we're like best friends and lean on each other. So I'm excited about this conversation because we talk about AI all the time. I also run a media company called Neon Lion Media. We have a nonprofit called Resilience to Reform, gives a voice to those who deserve a second chance. And then also I run Contractor Coalition with Brad Levitt here from AFT Construction and Nick Schiffer from NS Builders, which is a contractor conference that's hosted nationally 2 times a year. And then I also host a conference called Build Her Retreat, which is focused on female contractors, where we go to Costa Rica once a year to retreat and elevate and show up, just like the wonderful men in this room.
Oh, I want to go to Costa Rica. How do I sign up?
Mark's already tried a few times.
I'm Jon Walker. I'm the CTO of Builder Trend. I'm relatively new to the industry. I've been in technology for a long time. I've been the CTO of 4 companies now. 2 were acquired. The last one was a property management software company. It's public, called Appfolio. It's supposed to do about $730 million in revenue now this year. I left that about a year and 3 months ago to join Builder Trend. And I knew there's a lot that applies from the property management industry to the construction industry, but I knew almost zero about construction before that. And so I have about a year and 3 months of learning in. So I'm the rookie up here, I guess.
That's perfect. So a quick audience involvement, and I'm going to leave you, your hands are going to keep standing. Actually, I'll have you stand for this. Why don't you stand if you've ever used AI at all in business? If you use it once a week, stay standing. If you use it more than 3 times a week, stay standing. If you use it every day, stay standing. So for those not here, there's about 8, 9 people out of 300 that use it every day. You guys can be seated. One of the things that I wanted to challenge this group with a little bit is, and I don't actually agree with this stereotype, by the way, but a lot of people would look at the construction industry and think that we're dinosaurs, that we're not tech savvy, that we are not innovating. And I would challenge really the public at large to realize that even if that was the case, when a revolutionary technology comes along, like AI, John and I talked about this, so John approves with this message, is the group that is the furthest behind compared to its peers will close the gap the biggest. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're Target or Best Buy or a big, a commercial company. They have staffs of hundreds of people. I don't know how big all of you are as building companies. Maybe there's some bigger, maybe there's some smaller. But the point is with AI, your punching power went up exponentially. And I'm going to show you this slide here next, if we can put this slide up, of adoption. And so what we had here is, let's see if we can get this slide up. There we go. So most of us obviously know Netflix. It reached 1 million users in 3.5 years. Twitter, 2 years. Dropbox, 7 months. Instagram, 2.5 months. Look at ChatGPT, 5 days. It took 5 days to get 1 million users. Like, that is shocking. And keep in mind, that was 2 years ago. So the speed at which this is happening is beyond anyone up here's comprehension. We're only here talking about our experiences. One thing that I do want our guests to comment on is, I love specificity. In terms of I'd like to know exactly how we use some of these things. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. We're also going to talk a little bit about strategy. One thing that I'm really fascinated about with John up here is, most of us are super users or trying to adopt AI into our businesses. But John actually has to create it and has to predict what we're going to use. So I'm really interested at some of John's answers along those lines. We'll get rid of the Q&A. We can go back to the video. Then I don't have to use this thing. So I guess why don't we start with you, John, with that question. I mean, AI is often referred as this thing that we all know what it is. It's artificial intelligence, but that's about as far as most of us know about it, right? How does it differ from other technologies, and how is Buildertrend using it to help us as builders?
Well, I think AI it is pretty simple what it is. It's an attempt to mimic what we as humans are very good at. And it actually has been around for a long, long time. It was in the 80s, people started realizing, well, humans have all this expertise. How can we create systems that mimic that expertise? And there's a whole period where there's a ton of investment in the 80s in it, a big investment, and they never quite got over the hump. And so there's this whole period that they referred to as the AI winter that was basically between the 80s and basically when this idea of a neural network came around. And neural network it somewhat mimics the brain in terms of how it's an idea of mimicking our synapses a little bit. And really what's really moved the whole industry forward is this idea that these neural networks can train themselves and get very complex, like the brain is very complex. We don't even understand how it works. And that's one of the challenges of AI today, that it's hard to actually understand and have transparency about how it works. There's an idea of general AI, or general artificial intelligence, which is could it do everything a human does? And it's interesting because ChatGPT has become so popular, and I think a number of people in this room know about it. And there's an argument whether that's general AI or not. Really what it does is language, but so much of what we do as humans is language and speaking, that there's an argument that could be made that general AI is here with ChatGPT. But that's not all AI is good at. AI is very good at computer vision. There's a lot of areas that it can be applied. And it's all around these ideas around neural networks. There's a lot of other techniques, but I don't know if I got your whole question.
No, I mean it did, and maybe just to dive in, since we're here on this, is from a strategy standpoint. We're going to hear from Morgan and Katie in a minute about how they use specific programs for their business and how we as builders can adopt those to help us level up our businesses. But from your seat, you're creating what we're using. A lot of us use Buildertrend. And there's a lot of things that we want. Maybe talk a little bit about how do you choose what integrations to actually input into Buildertrend, and also how long does that take? I know it goes up on a board somewhere. You have a lot of engineers working on this, but from the idea to actually rolling it out, maybe give us some, as users, give us some perspective, because all of us would like it ASAP. I know it doesn't happen that quick. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that in every industry, it's starting to have big impact. And I was in the property management industry, which could be viewed as a little bit of a laggard technology-wise, at least information technology-wise. I actually agree with you that construction's not really a technology laggard. If you think about building materials and tools and how the industry's moved forward, it's actually kind of a technology adopter. In terms of IT technology, it's been a little bit of a laggard. Property management is like that too, and I can tell you, I left AppFolio about 1.5 years ago, and 5 years ago we were doing nothing with AI. We had a couple people that were tinkering with it. I built a whole AI team there, and when I left, it was probably we had about 600 people in product and engineering working on products there, and 75 of those were just purely dedicated to AI when I left, and I had built that whole team from nothing. The real approach we were taking there and that we're taking at Builder Trend is there's two things to successful AI adoption, I think. One is you've got to have a problem that AI solves really well. You've got to have something that people are willing to adopt. So a problem that you're solving for the customer and that they're willing to adopt. I remember when we were first doing some of AI, a lot of what we were thinking about was kind of replacing some of the very rote communication tasks that property managers had. And one of the things that was a real problem people had, answering tenant questions about new rentals. I'm sure you have tons of those kind of rote tasks in terms of answering questions. But one of the things that we had a challenge with was when we talked about replacing some of those, people pictured a phone tree. And I actually just had this frustration yesterday. I was trying to talk to FedEx, and I spent 30 minutes on the phone going through their phone tree, and I couldn't talk to anyone there. And so that was a real challenge we had, where it was a technology where people had a problem but weren't quite ready to adopt or didn't even understand what it would mean to adopt. And I think that's how we think about it at Builder Trend. And I think we'll look at each of the rote tasks. And what that does, you can kind of look at that as oh, that's scary, might replace jobs. What I think it does is it enables us to use the real creativity and kind of focus on the core of our business and the real value we add and get rid of some of the mundane that just really drags us down.
This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 20 years, I've been using Pella windows, and I couldn't be happier to call them as a business partner, a trade partner, and someone that really supports us in our quality builds. We use wood windows and doors on every single one of our homes, and 98% of every home that I've ever built has been a Pella window. I've gotten to know their team here locally as well as nationally, and the way that they support us as a craftsman, as well as they support our homeowners with their lifelong guarantee, has actually been a game changer for me. So when people ask me who I use, I recommend Pella. If you want to hear more about Pella's story, you can listen to episode 1, where I interview Peter and Ed from Pella Northland about their journey into the Pella ownership.
Just because I really want to know the answer to this, I'm going to keep drilling until I get an answer. When I
I'm trying to answer your question.
No, it's not that you're not doing a good job. I want more. When you come up with, we were talking backstage about daily logs in Builder Trend, right? Our project manager is in there. Katie brought this up. You're entering in. This is what you did this week. This is our look ahead. I know that idea is in Builder Trend to work on. How long? And I'm not going to hold you to this, but the rest of the world might. How long would it take to actually implement that?
I mean, the technology is moving super fast. You've kind of seen this. Literally, ChatGPT was introduced just a couple years ago. And so it's moving very fast. And ChatGPT belongs to this whole notion of generative AI, which is all about language. And daily logs is about language and pictures, obviously, too. Dedicated effort to that kind of stuff, it's getting faster and faster all the time, but you're looking at something you can roll out in 6 months, maybe. Yeah.
Perfect. Can we get a round of applause? I got an answer I wanted. Yes.
I never promise dates on anything, and I know you all identify with me because I'm building a house right now, and I don't get much date promises there.
Okay. Well played. Well played. Touche, sir. Touche. That was well played. When your house is finished, we expect that done. So all right. I'm not sure who your builder is. I hope he's here or she.
Oh my gosh.
Katie, why don't we shift over to you? What advice would you give to us as business owners that are hesitant to adopt AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of what Jon already shared, and I think it's identifying your problem. So for us, for me, really, I have a team of 10, and I still have yet to figure out how to replace myself. The communication piece, 100% of what I do every day is client engagement, communication, problem solving. I'm sure everyone in the room can resonate with that. And the communication piece is just always so overwhelming. there's not enough of it, we're not clear enough, we're too clear. I've had a client recently complain that we communicate too much.
Really?
Yes.
I have never heard that.
And then it's not even just the day-to-day, it's the strategy of marketing, content creation, email campaigns. So regardless of how much of that we are outsourcing, either it's out, through a third party or even internally with our team, it still needs to have another set of eyes, and it always rolls up to me. And mostly because that's the way I want it. It's my name, it's my brand. I want things to have a certain cadence to it, a certain voice. And so AI is a really great way to figure out what a small problem might be. And it might just be a communication strategy, and to figure out what your brand voice is. That can be used, and there are some tools we'll get into where you can, including ChatGPT, but I am actually not a ChatGPT user. I actually just went onto their website for the first time the other day, so I've adopted other tools. So I think it's, again, identifying your problem, small problems. I even heard somebody recently take their entire team, and they all needed to get on LinkedIn. And they needed a consistent bio for each person on LinkedIn. Well, they had AI write those across the whole team. And what a great way to get your brand out publicly in a large mass really quickly. And I know there's a lot of AI tools built into LinkedIn once you're on it. But once you start using it, you'll start seeing more prompts to dig into AI and to continue with a lot of other tools to continue to use it. And then also, I think the other point I want to make is surround yourself with a community just like we're here today, locally, of builders, renovators, partners that are using AI, that may have used other tools or adapting things at work, that are willing to show you how it works, maybe hop on a Zoom, do a webinar, maybe get some of your brand partners to dive in a little bit with you, take on a little bit of that, the accountability, or leverage those relationships. Morgan mentioned we work a ton together. The three of us are all local, so we're in a few different groups where we have a space to talk about it. But I was in a group of 20 women-owned businesses here locally, not in this industry, but their businesses are probably starting at 10 million. Some go up to 100 million. And some of the most successful women business owners in the room said, "But I just don't understand, what is AI? What is it?" And she didn't have a safe space to ask that, which she thought was a really dumb question. So we just opened up our computers and we showed her. We said, "Well, here it is. Here's how you use it." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is Google. This is a new version of just going into a search engine, typing in information, having it spit out content." But nobody ever taught her that, right? We just went to AI. We just went to ChatGPT. We just jumped to the tools that we're using, but never really explained to people what the heck you're trying to do and why. So again, surround yourself by a room of people that you can ask your dumb questions to and start getting your questions answered.
And going off that too, it's asking the partners that you have right now and the brands the tools that you use, the brands that you use, that you put into homes. That's what I've started doing, and challenging our team to start having those conversations with every single one of them, asking, how are you starting to utilize AI? What are you looking into? And with that list, I'm like, start taking note, people that are talking about it, people that have integrations already, start testing them out for them, giving them feedback. I think the really cool thing too is that we're all learning together. And Katie and I were just chatting on my drive in, and we were talking about that, where she had brought up, she was like, my husband and I started our company in 2012 when I started documenting what we were doing to this first investment property that we were renovating to sell. And we were talking about, like, that was early on with SEO and content creation, and no one knew what they were doing. And so I kind of started with content creation with brands, like figuring it out. So I think right now in the housing industry especially, like, we have such a cool opportunity right now to learn about AI with all the key players when it comes to building homes, building tools, building these brands that are being put into our clients' homes, and learning how they're going to do it, how we can do it, how we can together bring the industry up.
As you were thinking about adopting AI into your business and making a strategic decision, did you ever think about hiring someone? I know it's such a new field, so I don't even know if there's people out there that you have to imagine there's going to be very quickly people that specialize in AI adoption, that you could hire someone. And we all run pretty small companies outside of Jon. And I imagine some of us out here, do you think it's somewhat similar? Like, I know there's a lot of people out here that, maybe they feel like, let's call Instagram for an example. And they're like, you know what, I need someone to run my account. I mean, you have Neon Line. You actually do this for companies where people will hire your company and they help manage their social media content. Have you ever thought about hiring, and people out here as well, as maybe, I think one of the barriers to entry to AI is how much of this do I have to figure out myself? How much time am I actually time blocking or setting aside to really devote to my self-education? And the answer is we all should be spending some time on it because it's going to affect all of us in many ways. But have you ever considered hiring someone to like literally be that integrator for AI for your companies or not?
I have not, because I have not found anyone yet that probably knows
I was just thinking the same thing. I have trust issues.
more.
I have so much control on what the messaging is that goes out, which I could probably be in therapy about.
This is therapy.
But it's worked so well for us that I think that's what's working for us. I don't know. We have a funnel. We have never dried up in leads. We've never had to, and I think a lot of that goes down to our communication and the brand strategy that we've adopted early on. But what I did was I took the work, which I maybe started to say in the last answer and I didn't finish. I took the work that was already on my to-dos, and I had to figure out a way to simplify and bring in help. And I have tried, again, because it's the budget, right? We don't have a huge tech budget. We don't have a huge marketing budget. So we do a lot of things in-house. And I have tried so hard to outsource some of the things. And I know that, Morgan, you have a company that helps people with that, so I'm not contradicting
I struggle
her work.
with this within that every day.
But it's bringing in that outside help and then looking at the work and saying, that's not our voice. It's just, you don't get it. That's not who we are. We can't use that content. But with the AI tools, we have trained that voice so well that it's like me on 10 cups of coffee. It's so good.
I think that's one important message that you're kind of getting to. You're saying like we haven't really gotten AI experts, but I think part of it is it's much more accessible than people think. And I think there was a show of hands who's using it every day. You're actually all using it every day now. If you're Google searching, it's in there. And I was kind of talking backstage. I switched when ChatGPT came out. You probably noticed this, but Google search results are pretty bad nowadays. There's a lot of paid content and a lot of robo-generated content. And so whenever I was searching for something, I was kind of sifting through. I got good at it. Like my mind got good at like, oh, here's the thing I'm looking for, 7 down. But I switched away from it to ChatGPT. And at the time, ChatGPT had like a 2021 version of the internet, so you couldn't ask it things like, what's the movie that's playing this weekend? But it was working for about 80% of my searches, much better than Google. I've actually switched back to Google because Google's integrated, they called it Bard, now Gemini. You can tell we're still in the dork name stage of AI. Like, we shouldn't forget, Google, actually, the name Google is from this number, the gigantic number, Googleplex. And technologies kind of go through this like dork, computer science name phase, and then they become a little more mainstream. And sometimes we even forget the genesis of those.
Then they hire a branding expert.
I guess my point is it's really accessible. And I talked to 3 builders literally in the last 2 weeks that said they were using ChatGPT to do all their, the standard operating procedures. They were using ChatGPT to generate the standard operating procedures. And one of them was telling me that his people challenged him on it and said, like, why are you doing this? It can't be right. And he said, look at him and tell me what's wrong with him. And he basically took the challenge. And he was not modifying them, basically. He probably was pretty good at getting queries in there, like after a little bit of work. But just, he was a regular person, just using them to do standard operating procedures. I also heard him doing them for hiring and job postings. That's another one I've heard. Just in the last 2 weeks, I've heard a couple builders say that.
We just did that last week, actually. I need to do a better job of interviewing people so that when we are ready to hire, as a small company, it's not something I probably spend enough time. And so I don't actually do it. My person that helps me write a lot of my blogs in ChatGPT, heavy user, I said, can you please write me a job description? And like 2 seconds later, it's like, wow, that's really good. Yeah. The way to go. So I think a lot of it is, and I'm concerned about my voice as well, right? We all have, Morgan has trained us to be very brand conscious. And so it's like, okay, I want to make sure that what I'm presenting, all of you out there, as you're building companies, if you're being intentional about, what your messaging is, your website, how it looks, it's no different than the quality you put in your homes. You want it to be you. You want that to be a differentiator. And so if AI is changing that, I can see why people are hesitant. But to me, it's such a great first draft, and then you can color it in, how you wish.
And if you're using it every day, so for us and even our team, I'm like, I want to be replaced. I'm working on that every single day. Me and my husband are working on our exit strategy every single day. And then I'm telling our team, you should be working on your exit strategy every single day. And so I'm like, have ChatGPT pay for the version. It is well worth it because it integrates with so many other tools. But I'm like, I have it up all day long. I encourage our team to have it up all day long. And what you were saying with like processes, I'm constantly like, this is our employee handbook. This is our Bible. This is everything we do within our company. Every single thing you do every day should be living in this, and then it should be in our live C2S Bible, because that too is like sellable assets for later. So on top of like daily operations, which I think if anything, it makes your company better. It helps it stay on brand, especially when new people are starting at your company or interns are starting. Everything is dialed in there, and then this bot gets to know your brand on a whole nother level, so that anytime you're using it for communication or brand, it knows every single thing beyond just the way you talk. It's about colors, it's how these people have to represent themselves and show up, from how they're talking, person to person, to the energy that they're giving to homeowners when they walk into a room.
I would add as well, we have a really young team. Not everybody. My husband's not young. I'm just kidding. He's 52. We like to give him a good time. Our team is pretty young, and the confidence in writing emails is one of the hardest things I have to manage every day. And giving them the confidence.
And managing meetings, right?
Yes.
Too.
And
it's
just,
like,
we have a team meeting, we'll have a set of deliverables, and then my team has to go execute emails to homeowners, and it's a big deal. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a project, and we can't write an email with we have to use our punctuation. We try not to use the word like. Try not to have an exclamation mark at the end of all your sentences. And I give that feedback, and they buckle up, and they just want me to write the email, and they're just terrified to send that communication out. But to your point of having that tool open on your desktop, just like you have your email, you should have your ChatGPT or Jasper, whatever tool you're using, and your team can go in and say, just play with it. Just draft an email, prompt it, tell it your problem. Help me write an email that's telling a homeowner that we're over budget by X amount and Y, et cetera. And again, you wouldn't probably copy and paste that content into an email, but it helps them understand how to craft a professional email. And it seems so basic. But have you ever had somebody send an email that got you in a lot of trouble, right? And then what do you do?
Morgan, you had mentioned a little bit about your back office operations. What are some AI tools specifically that you use, and maybe give us an example of how you're using them and how your team is using it? Maybe we'll talk about the back operations first, and then maybe about client-facing second, if there's an illustration of that.
Okay, so ChatGPT 4, do the paid version. The free one, I think, is just pretty basic. I mean, do the free to get started and 101 to get going, but once you invest in the free one, it has so many other, I call them like plugins, even though they're not plugins, but tools that it integrates with. And so the big one, I guess this is internally and externally, so is DALL-E, D-A-L-L-E. It integrates with ChatGPT 4. We can talk to, and a lot of times too, so how I'm using it daily is with ChatGPT 4 app on my phone, even on my way down here on the hour drive. Like, I'm talking, because that's when I get my best thoughts, is like when I actually have time to think in the car. So I'm talking to my phone constantly. I'm talking to ChatGPT 4 to take notes, to relay back things to team meetings. That's when my creativity comes to me, my inspiration. So a lot of times I start thinking about maybe a client project and something I even see as I'm driving. I can talk to it, and it basically can curate a mood board for me. It can do renderings for me. A lot of times, like, our team, we can't get on the same page, even when it's like us, the designer, my husband, the contractor, the architect, the homeowner. Like, we have all of us in the room, like, have all these different key players in place that we have to get on the same page to potentially present to the client. And so even with that, like, a lot of DALL-E and ChatGPT 4 I use for just like, instead of having, my rule is like, we're never having meetings about meetings and meetings about client meetings. And when we have to figure something out, I'm like, let's figure it out via email and we can get this done. So I always go back to time is money too. And so that just helps streamline a lot of things, even getting people, subcontractors out to job sites to maybe show like an application on a wall, to show a homeowner, to show maybe how the tile is going to be laid for the tile installer. DALL-E and ChatGPT do all that for us, so I never have to go to a job site. Another one too is just like showing selections in these. I try to encourage our team to cut back on showroom visits, cut back on getting samples out to our clients, because again, time is money. We run a lean and clean ship. And so I'm always like, the more you can be at your desk and get work done, or be on a job site and get work done, the better, and utilize these tools to get the job done. Another thing I would say within that, ChatGPT 4 is like a lot of trend and data analysis. I think too, the housing industry, like you were saying, is like, we're so far behind, yet I think we should be the biggest thought leaders out there. Like, we are building every single building that people are in every day, and we're behind. So I think there's just such a barrier that we have to like progress and move faster. And so this is pulling data, like you said, this has been around for a very long time, and this is pulling data for us when it comes to not just like designs and homes, but what homeowners are looking for, what they want to spend, the latest tools, the latest staffing on how to run our companies, pricing, all of that. And so I think just like looking at ChatGPT 4, within that there's trends, there's data. We have it all synced and integrated with our website, which shows us where the traffic's coming from, our social media tools. I use it for scheduling. I use Sprout. Sprout has an AI integration. Love that tool. That also helps me with any content that I'm putting on social media.
This episode is brought to you by Adaptive. For over 2 years now, I've been using Adaptive. It's an incredible game changer. It's AI technology based. It helps you with bill pay. And as a builder, there's very few things that anger our subs more than not being paid on time. Well, those days are gone. Not only do you know exactly where you are, but you can pay people through your ACH channels, making draws extremely quick. With one click of a button, which used to take hours, my office staff is now able to generate a draw to the bank or to the client in literally seconds. The thing that I appreciate the most about Adaptive is their ability to keep changing. We've given them 3 or 4 feedbacks on the things that we need as builders, and within just a few months, they're rolling those things out. This is saving us hours per week and days per month in terms of our efficiency. If you're looking to upgrade your business, I'd highly recommend Adaptive. You can reach out to them at adaptive.com or listen to the Curious Builder Podcast, episode 15 or episode 80, where we dive into their origin story.
Lake Society Magazine is Minneapolis' premier target market boutique lifestyle and design publication. It embodies the unique lifestyles and design of the Minneapolis City Lakes neighborhoods. From Lake of the Isles to Lake Harriet, it showcases the best in local design projects by both premier builders, architects, and interior designers in this area. Lake Society Magazine has the look and feel of a national publication with glossy covers, high-end finishes. It's mailed directly to upper bracket single-family homeowners in the City Lakes area, and it's the perfect local coffee tabletop publication. Subscriptions can also be available through the website lakesocietymagazine.com. Additionally, publisher and founder Karen Steckel has over 27 years in the local magazine publishing industry and has a passion for high-end photography and quality graphics. Her commitment to quality, visual simplicity, and beauty are strongly reflected in her beautiful Lake Society magazine.
I think all of us as, owners of companies, I feel like for me, scheduling, it's just a lot of scheduling that goes on. You schedule about scheduling, it just becomes a lot. How are you using AI to help you with scheduling?
So, and we were just talking about this too. So, I'm speaking for Katie too. So both Katie and I use a lot for internal. We use Monday.com, which has been a game changer for our company. And then I integrate a lot of ChatGPT and Jasper.ai. A lot of things too, I'm like, who needs to be, again, our bot knows our company, it knows our team, it knows what they do in the team, in our company. And so I'm always like talking to it, like, who should be doing this? How much time should they be taking? How much should we be budgeting for this? And so I'm able to use ChatGPT and Monday then to build out kind of a drip, right? When this is done, it's going to them. This is the only time it should be taking. And I'm not sitting there for weeks trying to determine, how much, or even asking them. I think the biggest thing that we have too within this industry is like, or for me, the hardest thing is like managing people. I'm very impatient. I'm like, let's go. I don't want to sit there and talk about your feelings. I have 3 kids at home. Like, I have enough feelings to deal with. And so I'm constantly just like, a lot of that takes away from that. I don't need to sit and have these conversations about, why did this take you so long? Why didn't you get this done X, Y, and Z? Where I can see, because data is being pulled from these tools, how long it's taking them. If there's an issue, then I can address it. But to say, this should only take this amount of time, and here's why. and then we can schedule it that way. And if red flags keep getting brought up, then we can figure that out. And then Buildertrend is going to incorporate all of that into its tool within the next year. Just kidding.
It only takes 6 months, guys. It's not a big deal.
As soon as my house is built.
Katie, for you, what role has AI played for you with your CRM systems and following up leads, things like that?
Yeah, so we adopted Jasper.ai. That's our favorite tool we use. Probably use it daily, if not several days throughout the week. And have been able to just put in specific URLs to our website. So I started just to experiment with our blog where we have a different voice. It might be really casual, friendly, approachable. We might have more of an educational blog, a tutorial, and our blog does lean a little bit more into, complications in renovating a 100-year-old home. We're trying to hit some targeted niche markets. And so it's free. So again, if you're just getting started, you get one voice for free. If you want to upgrade, I'm still on actually the one voice, the free version, because it's, again.
What does that mean, one voice?
One voice, so I just put in one URL link. So I'm just telling it one voice. But when I prompt.
So like Kath for her brand voice.
Yeah, and I found a blog that I feel like has a really good balance of my voice that we're using, so I'm not using just my homepage. I'm directing it to a specific blog with content. But I could have 4 or 5 or more different voices, and it could be a blog. I could upload our employee handbook. So it would obviously be much more formal writing. And then when I do a prompt to ask it to do something, I can choose my voice.
Wow.
I'm just choosing my one voice. I don't need the 5 voices. Again, we're not spinning out that much content. And then within that, once it gives me what I'm asking for, I can always modify it, right? But we're using that for all of our content creation. Anytime somebody comes to our website, they fill out our Apply to Partner with Us form, they get added to our email list. So whether or not they want to hire us or not, or they liked our response to the inquiry, they're automatically going to get our email communication until they unsubscribe. So all of that is pulling on the voice that we've trained Jasper to use. With our so that's hopeful with our CRM. It's not a specific tool we're using, but just how we're doing that.
Are you making it not opt-in? So anytime someone fills it out, they have to give you the website? Their email.
Yeah, they're.
I like that.
They go
to
in.
make it.
Yeah, they're added.
Hey, Fathom, make a note for Mark Williams Custom Homes
You
to
took
change
time
that.
out of our day to get in our inbox. You're going on the list.
Right.
Well, and also think about from the ad spend, right? For you guys who spend, I work with builders that spend tens of thousands of dollars on ad spend on retargeting people that are coming to their site. This will now do it for free.
Yeah, and then anytime we leave, so without getting into our process, but our process is very tailored, and it took us probably about 18 months to develop our inquiry, our gen lead process. But once we get in, the whole goal of that was to minimize our trips out to people's homes. A little bit different than a new construction, you might not even have land, right? But we have homes, and anyhow, and I know a lot of you do that as well. So when we do get to the home, then we go back to Jasper AI when we come back to the office, and then we're putting in basically the prompts of what happened on the job site, putting in the notes that we took, and then it's spitting out a scope of work for us. So then we take that and we put that into the pitch, the proposal for not our renovation agreement, but our next phase in the process, which is our design agreement, which allows them to hire our team to do the scope development, budgeting, and then basically the set of tools that come with that. So Jasper AI is a great one. And then we also, I'll just mention another one, we use Loom, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. It's been around for a while. And this is a little bit more internal, but this helps again with our team as they're communicating with our clients. And we record videos. We use it in a few different ways, but one is we're just creating a video library internally. So it might be, my gosh, our team has given so many demonstrations of how to put door hardware on and how to match it with the hinge, and so we're like, oh my gosh, we have to start recording this now. So anytime new employees come in, so we have a video library. It's really informal. We're just using a gimbal, or we can record right through Loom, and we're putting it all in there. But then Loom will transcribe everything you've said. And so if you're doing it for external client interfacing, so it might be that we're presenting a budget update, we might be anything that would have been like a heavy email, we're starting to evaluate, is this too heavy to be sending an email? Should we be on the phone? Should we be in person? Or another option might be, can we actually record a video of us explaining to the homeowner what this email is? And then Loom you can record your screen, you can have your head talking if you want. You can opt to turn the camera off so it doesn't actually show you, but it has your voice. And then when you're done with the recording, again, this is free, up to a 5-minute video. anything over 5 minutes, I think, right?
Yeah.
You have to be on the paid version. We're still on the free. So we'll just might send 3 5-minute videos, and then you can change the speed. It will eliminate all your ums and ahs and what ifs and filler words. And then it'll also create a transcript of what you said, and the AI will pull the transcript out. So then again, for our younger team members, they can find a cleaner version to pick and choose what of this transcript I then want to put in the body of my email and then attach these videos. A lot of that's early for design, decision, et cetera. And I love Morgan's approach, but one thing we do differently is we're using AI to get our team out of the office. So we want to be in more showrooms, we want to be on job sites, and we want to be in our client homes, and we want to spend less time doing this all day.
Yeah.
So again, my team loves to just sit behind a computer, which is great. There's so much work to be done, but I need them to get in their cars and go do that hands-on, face-to-face.
What are your clients saying? What are they, and this could go to any of the three of you, but maybe we'll start with you, Katie. What are your clients saying about these Loom videos, other than the one that says, please stop communicating, it's too much, which is ironic. That's the first time I've ever heard a client say you
We had to have a phone call so she'd give me feedback on our communication.
Oh, no.
What are they saying about the Loom videos, or what resonates with your clients the best?
You know, it's interesting. So we can see when they watch them, and we can see who watched them. So if we send it to a few people, it'll show us when they logged in and watched the video. I think what's interesting is it could take them a long time to watch. Sometimes people don't actually watch them for a while, which also helps me answer a question like why it does take homeowners a while to respond to emails. It's probably they just didn't have the time. But I would say, generally speaking, it's usually within the same day. All the videos are being watched, and I think it's just getting the answers we need a lot quicker. I mean, nobody has really said, wow, those videos are so cool. Where'd you think of that? And I think, too, there's a certain generation that Loom is like old news.
Right.
I think a lot of people are using Loom, yeah.
Yeah, and I love Loom for all the things, but not even via email, but just texting. So I encourage our team too. I'm like, send a Loom more than even emails if you can, because then I'm like, it's 20 seconds of just showing up. So again, getting them off of being so much in person. I feel like we haven't lost that touch because there's still, and I'm always like, turn your camera on. I don't care what you look like. Again, just show up who you are. I'm like, turn that camera on, send them a thing. Because no matter what kind of mood they might be in or whatever, like I just think that helps like reset the tone.
I had a builder I interviewed on a podcast recently, and he actually has in their conference room one of those 360 cameras, and they record every conversation that they have with every client. And he implemented it for different reasons. His was to make sure that you never got into a he said, she said situation, or even if their team was meeting with the client. And it would also recap it for people that weren't there. So as your team grows, you could obviously have it emailed to you, you could file it in there, and unfortunately, the dark side of the business sometimes is we do have to protect ourselves. One of the frustrating things that I find in business is like John and I will have a conversation about building his home. 6 months later, something will come up and he'll say, hey, Mark, you promised me this. And I'm like, did I? Because if I did, I'll honor it. But like, now it becomes back to your comment about people being in the office. It's like you have this conversation, then you have to go back to the office, you have to write everything that you talked about, send it to the client and say, per our discussion, this is what we discussed. I mean, imagine how much time you would save, even if obviously remotely you can have a little microphone, or your phone will obviously do this. You could record the entire conversation, let the client know, and then send them a copy of the notes. It's not like it's nefarious or anything. If anything, they'll perceive you as being like uber tech savvy and very competent. And again, that's one of the things that will raise this industry up quite quickly, is like, wow, look at how they're adopting it.
So Otter, which you do, this is like my favorite tool to use too, and again, encouraging our team to use it. So now too, I am like reminding myself, like, even though you get invited to a meeting, doesn't mean you need to accept it, you know? So that's my favorite thing to do now, is like deny all these meetings. But my Otter shows up to the meetings, and I'm, again, saving so much time, mental energy, because I'm not on these Zoom calls, I'm not in person doing them, but my Otter's there. So my Otter's documenting everything, and then I immediately get an email. This is in person too. So if our team is going to these meetings, I'm not going, because again, I want less than 2 people at every meeting, because I just see $100 an hour going out the window if there's, you know, just standing there chit-chatting, whatever. But so the Otter goes to the meetings. The Otter is on the Zoom meetings, and then I get an email recap, and so does everyone else that was invited to this meeting, whether they went or not. And then at the end of it, it recaps right at the bottom. Morgan's to do, Jamie's to do, whomever's to do, or their next steps, their deliverables. Not one person has to document anything. Not one person has to say, oh, I'll get back to you on this. it's all right there, and then I know exactly what I need to do, and I just saved the entire company thousands of dollars.
John, a question from you on your side of things. Sometimes people are afraid of something that they don't understand. It's a normal human reaction. What risks are there with data being out there that's being captured by all this information? Is there a dark side? Like, even this morning, like I was looking on Instagram, I was going to send out a video, and it said your entire photo library has exceeded 6 months of access and I was like, whoa, okay. It's like I think of all the pictures I have of my kids on there, things like that. And I'm a pretty open person. I'm not very private, but I was like, okay, deny. And anyway, the point is like, we're talking about people's finances. There's a lot of financial data on our computers. If a client came to us and said, I'm uncomfortable with the amount of information that you're gathering, how would we as builders answer that? And have you seen any kickback as you're developing these systems?
I mean, I think it's obviously a conversation, right? I was just talking about this. It reminds me of the early days of search. If you remember when Google came around, one of the first thing that happened, everyone said, oh, Google shouldn't be making all this money off of our content, and like a lot of the newspapers sued, and there's actually a bunch of the newspapers, a lot of them private equity owned, just filed a lawsuit actually against ChatGPT to try to get their content off. Now we kind of know how the search went. It was like, oh, it's really valuable to get your content on there. You want it to be searchable, you want it to be findable. And so I think there's a balance there. There's obviously a problem that's being recognized because a lot of the big providers of things like ChatGPT-like technologies are starting to offer solutions where your data is kind of isolated. And there's actually whole models that are just based around like isolated data and things like that. And so I think there's some caution to have. I think we tend to overvalue some of that. And even internally to Builder Trend, we have a lot of discussion there. There's some amazing tools that actually help you program, and you can be like almost 50% more efficient using these tools. One of them is called Autopilot. And so you talk a lot about it. By the way, you're a tough boss. I don't know if I want to go on that vacation with you anymore. Is it going to be that structured? No, I'm like that. So, but we have a lot of discussion, like how valuable is our code? Like how much of it should we be putting there? How much should we worry about it? And so I think it's a conversation. I've actually had the discussion that, and I've had this for a long time in technology, software is very, very complex now. It takes big teams to build it. I could actually probably take all our source code and give it to someone, and it wouldn't be very valuable. They would need a large portion of our team to actually make it into a business that's similar to Builder Trend. Yeah. And so I think we overemphasize that a little bit, but it's definitely something to be thoughtful about, and obviously the industry is thinking about it.
Maybe as a final question here before we open it up for Q&A, and I'll let each one of you respond to this. In the next 5 to 10 years, what do you think, I guess, what do you see on the horizon? And maybe I'll have John, you answer this first since you're probably more aware of what's being developed, or I hope you are. What do you see coming down the road? If you had to guess 5 to 10 years from now, whether you want to hedge it, like what will we as builders be using, or what sort of implementations do you think are out there, or is it so new in the game that it could be too many things and it's almost impossible to predict?
I definitely think that technology is going to transform every industry, and AI is just one of those big generational changing technologies. I think it is really hard to predict. I think actually there's a whole shift in the labor market that's happening right now where it's hard to hire. And part of that is a reaction to what jobs are valuable anymore, what's going to be automated. I actually believe that we're going to adapt around that, and there's going to be lots of value in human capital still. I think that that's actually causing part of the labor market we see right now, and it's the unpredictability. And certainly if the labor markets across the whole globe can't predict this stuff, I don't think that I can go that far into it, but I definitely know, you can look at it, rote tasks, those are going to be done by AI, and they're already being done. What you're starting to see now is, actually, I'm talking a little bit later about this, but I'll give away one of them. Salesforce just announced last week that they're going to a new licensing model, and I know a lot of people in here think about Salesforce or use something similar to it on the CRM side. They're going to a new licensing model. Instead of charging for the software, they're charging $2 an hour for AI people that work for you on Salesforce. And so I don't know if that model says like it's worth about 1/4 of minimum wage, and so that's the kind of task they can do, or if it says this is so effective. And they literally say AI can do these certain tasks, and we've built these AI people. And we had a lot of success with that at my last company, actually. Property managers would outsource to call centers. some of their calls. And we actually replaced a good portion of the leasing calls that came in with AI-generated content and call answers. Actual real voices, we'd switch to text, we'd go to text. AI is really good at text. You're starting to see where it's really good at verbal communication. And I think what's interesting now is like people are looking at it at scale, you know, like how do we automate a sales team and take some of those tasks away and do the verbal communication there. I think that you'll start to see that more individualized. In the construction industry, I talk to so many people who are like, well, I learned the craft from a master builder, or I have a lot of the value in my company is all this construction knowledge I've gained over time. And even Katie was talking about how she's training AI to be her in a certain, or have her voice. I think we'll see a lot more of that, where it's like, you've got personal AI. I'll tell you, yesterday I sat on the bus for 15 minutes next to Phil Randolph, and he talked about the lumber industry, and I felt like I got a PhD in lumber. I wish I had an AI Phil Randolph. And Alyssa was telling stories. Alyssa, who's been up here a lot, she tells a story of how Phil trained her on materials by taking her to Home Depot and kind of going aisle by aisle and when I heard that story, I said, maybe I should move next to Phil for a couple months. I could learn so much. That would be pretty amazing. I'd mow his lawn, whatever he wants me to do. I think there's going to be an AI Phil, and Phil will still be really valuable, but there will be an AI Phil that can train me to go to Home Depot on materials.
I love that.
And plug for his timber talk later today. I was just blown away. It was an amazing experience for me to pick that kind of brain.
I love that. Well, and I would just say, going off that too, like Courtney and I were talking about yesterday in our brand presentation, but people want emotion again. So what I think is really interesting and fun and exciting about our industry is that I think with AI, it's going to help us bring back the emotion. It's going to help us stay creative in our job and help automate all of the things that we shouldn't be doing and get that time back, get that mental energy back, get that clarity back in the industry. And like you said, like 5 to 10 years, who the heck knows? Because I was on an AI panel in January at KBIS, and it's like night and day from where that was to just now. And so I just think it's really exciting in that kind of way. And I think it's just going to speed our industry up, also to make us industry experts as professionals and not just, laborers and all this other stuff. And for homeowners to see our industry as something a little bit different, like others, and get our voice out there more. So, yeah.
I think that was the hardest question of all of them, was where will it be in 5 to 10 years? That's a hard one for me to answer. And maybe we're only just a year or so away from it, but it's a little bit of what Jon said. I hope that within the tools I'm using, even just the day-to-day ones, email, Outlook, WordPress, my website, that I don't have to go to a third party, a ChatGPT or a Jasper, to find my information. I want to just have it start populating within my everyday tools and the voice that I'm using. So I'm continuing to replace myself, either that I'm relying on AI, or as I'm bringing in new team members, there's a way that I'm documenting that transition so people can take over the communication piece of what we're doing.
I was going to say one more thing, just to encourage you to kind of get a sense of where it's going. I'm a big book reader, and not all of you are maybe, but there's a great book by Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn. It's called Impromptu, and he basically wrote the book with AI, and he talks about, with ChatGPT specifically, and he talks about the prompts he uses, and it gives you a real sense of what it can do today. And the real interesting part of the book is, and he didn't take the construction industry, I wish he would have, but he goes into the field with certain experts and has them use ChatGPT to try to do their work. And so he works with a film producer or a script writer. And it's really interesting. You can kind of see how effective it is. And the scriptwriter starts out and he's having it write these scripts, and the dialogue's kind of stale, or it's not very good. But he gets to it and he says, hey, create a plot twist here. And AI creates this plot twist, ChatGPT does. And he said, oh, okay, that's an okay one, but don't do these obvious plot twists. And so basically, in about 15 minutes, he experiments and comes up with a very novel plot twist that he probably would have had to spend hours writing multiple scripts, basically hundreds of scripts to get to. And so it was all his creativity. He had to recognize which plot twist was interesting, which plot twist not to use. He probably would have had to rewrite a lot of the dialogue because it was a little bit stale, but it was an empowering thing for him, and he kind of saw the vision. And He also talks to a musician and he says, what if there was an AI version of Bob Dylan out, you know? And that's kind of scary, right? Like, is Bob Dylan valuable now? And the musician had the same reaction, that's scary. And then he said, well, what if Bob Dylan had an AI that was just like him, and instead of writing songs, he could write 1,000 songs and pick the one that really hits home for him? How much of an amplifier that creativity would be. That's a great book, Impromptu. It really gets you a sense of where things are going and kind of shows how it's still going to enable us to be really creative and add value, but use AI to kind of up-level our productivity.
Thank you for all your input. How much time do we have for Q&A? 5 minutes. All right, so let's open up for Q&A for any of our guests. If anyone has questions, we will get you a microphone, and we'd ask you just to wait till you have the microphone to speak your question so we can get it recorded. So anyone that has a question, please stand up. And frequent flyer over here, this gentleman, he likes his questions. You are a curious builder, my friend. I like you.
Good morning, thank you. I don't know that much about this, so I got a ton of notes and I appreciate it. But Elon Musk, who I think should be electroshocked for his own good, suggests that AI someday is going to take over the world and this is a very dangerous thing and it keeps him up at night. Is there any truth to that? Anybody concerned that they're going to take over all the airplanes and we're not going to be able to get home?
I don't probably have the most sophisticated answer to Elon Musk, but I am a firm believer that we're creating jobs. And while I talk about eliminating my role, but we're creating content that allows us to back up to what's our strategy. So now our team can think deliberately about, do we want to send out that weekly email? Do we want to up that cadence to 2 or 3 a week? And we're taking our scope of work and our proposal statements that we're putting together, we've juiced them up. So I think we're just taking all of this AI content. It's much like if you have 1,000 songs and you can pick one, we're still doing the work, and it'll still require, in my opinion, the human lens, creativity, and it's really just freeing up time where I can take our budget and I can hire. We've been able to add more people to our team to go in the field and do the work that we need to get done.
I would also add any tool, whether it's a gun, a car, whatever. I mean, they're going to be created. How we use them is really up to us. We'll have a totally different panel that's going to have to answer some of those questions ethically, but some of it has arrived. Like whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, like it's here, and you might as well use it to harness your business and help you to buy back your time. One thing we didn't talk about, Morgan has Build Her Retreat. We have something called Boot Camp and Sauna Camp. If you could actually, while we want to be more productive and we want to make more money, a big part of it too is if this can buy back our time so you can read a book, so you can go for a run, so you can exercise, so you can spend more time with your family. Like, what is that worth? We could do a whole hour-long podcast just on that worth. And it's a great question. I think we'll see what humans do with it, like anything else. I mean, I don't think it's any different than any other tool personally.
I don't believe it.
We only have so much time, but real quick, I have a slightly different answer to that. I do think there's some real dangers to it. I actually think we will legislate around it, and you could say, well, that's scary. Has government ever solved problems like this before? And I always point to, there's very, very complex systems that we have regulation around, and one of the best ones that you can point to is the financial markets. And the SEC does an amazing job regulating that. They catch people that are small-time people doing trades that are dishonest, and it's an incredibly complex computerized system. And we've created a body that regulates it and does a pretty good job of it. I think that's the direction it'll go at some point for the very dangerous parts of AI. Yeah. And Elon Musk isn't the only one who thinks that. There's a lot of people that think that.
Yeah. We're going to be out of time. Remember, all the notes will be emailed to you as well. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for all our guests for sharing your insights. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share it with your friends and family. Find out more at curiousbuilderpodcast.com.